They're gonna catch my checklist. That's a bad bet.
We are back. This is
Yes,
Never
we
Fade.
are FaXx. Let's
The
go, FaXx.
NFT podcast. I'm your host, FaXx. And I want to thank you for joining us and all the support and feedback. Don't forget to subscribe on our YouTube and follow us at Never Fade NFT. As always, I'm with
Why would you follow us, FaXx? Why would you follow us? Give me reason to follow you on YouTube.
Why would you follow us on YouTube? Well, I would say this is, a little bit biased, but it's, the best podcast content in Web3 today, guaranteed. Absolutely not going to waste your time. Going to give you just something to think about, to chew on, actionable information. I mean, the list goes on and on. Good. Why do you think people should be tuning in and subscribing?
Yeah, you know why? You know why people should subscribe? Because I have group chats. I have iMessages of friends that used to be in the space that still hold assets. I ping them and they're 4 hours late. They don't make the moves. They don't make the moves they need to make. They don't pop the coda when the coda needs to be popped. They don't do what they need to do with their collections. You subscribe to Never Fade, you get clips from the jump. You get action items from the jump before they hit. And that's why you need that in your veins. If we could deliver this intravenously, we would. We don't care about the numbers. We don't care about the analytics. We don't care about any of that. If we could drop knowledge to you intravenously, God damn it, I'd do it.
That's right. We're mainlining dank content out here. And we got more of that for you today. We got a very interesting episode lined up here. One that kind of hits home for me a little bit in kind of a bad way. But you know what? We're here to uncover that and look under the hood and see what's changed. And that's the story of Oniforce.
Oniforce.
So I want to kind of walk you guys through my story a little bit.
First off, before we go into the down bad Ave and watch your glass jaw shatter on the floor, let's give Oniforce a little bit of credit. There was a point in time in August of 21 when they were on the podium. It was, you don't count CryptoPunks in this case because the provenance, they've been there for a while. It was Bake, it was Pixel Vault, and it was Oniforce, the first anime project to drop. It was hot as hell. Take it over. Let's hear the L.
It was hot, dude. And you know what? And I was there in the thick of it, dude. Feeling the FOMO, man. That thing came out. It started running. That floor started running like you've never seen. It was on the back of some explosive, bullish situations in the NFT space. And then when this particular project hit, I think a lot of people were excited because the artist on Complex, he was making Bored Ape derivatives, like really sick ones, that just the derivative ape art was selling for 2 or 3 ETH. And so this collection came out. It was like an anime style. The art just slapped and everybody was pumped up about it. But what nobody was prepared for was what was going to happen to the floor price. And my personal story, I got a couple early on there in the secondary around a half an ETH, and they just started running. 1 ETH, 2 ETH, 3 ETH. I flipped one for 6 ETH. I flipped another one, and I'm already I'm up, thousands of dollars. But it was at this point that Logan Paul dropped almost $600,000 on a rare Oniforce. And I mean, the secondary FOMO went wild. And on the timeline, people were calling for this to be the next Bored Ape Yacht Club, the next biggest thing to hit Web3. And sure enough, I ponied up almost 15 ETH, which at the time was over $30,000 to buy one rare Oniforce. And I was excited. I was excited. I was like, man, this is sick art. The community is pumped up about it.
Was it strategic or were you bit?
You know what? Honestly, it was FOMO. I had already achieved some profits. And at that point, I was like, what do I do? Do I sit on the sideline and in a hold and see what happens? Or do I snipe this rare Oni with a Jasper doll on its shoulder and a sick mask and, see where this goes? And I just I just went for it, man. I sniped a rare, and I was part of the experience. I was pumped up about it. But then what happened in the pursuing...
Hold up,
Yeah.
hold up. Did you snipe the rare, or did you exit lick yourself? But can we be honest at that point? Like, was it a snipe? Did you get a deal on it, or were you someone's exit lick?
The funny thing is, at the time, the mindset was like, wow, look at what I sniped. I got this rare one, for 15 ETH. This is for sure going to be worth 50 ETH, like,
Yeah.
just doesn't make sense when you look back on it. But that's a big,
So to go back to the point, you didn't snipe, you bought list. That FaXx?
Yeah, I was someone's exit
Okay.
liquidity for sure. No question about it.
Okay.
But then what unfolded over the course of the next few days is what started to become concerning, which is that I'm poking around the Discord. I'm getting a vibe for what's going on. It's like this anime culture that I wasn't necessarily that familiar with. And, the weebs and the simps and the Discord, they were living it up, man. They were having the time of their life. I was trying to understand it. And then I see J.R. Artspace post a video of himself, backstage in Vegas with Aoki, popping bottles, celebrating the W.
And you didn't know the Aoki curse. The Aoki curse wasn't live at the time.
That's right. This was early Aoki curse. And it started to hit me what was happening here. And I think what was happening was that a network of Clubhouse communicators, influencers that were well connected to bigger influencers essentially got together with a very impressive artist, launched this collection. There was a lot of hype, a lot of big buys driving that hype. But then it started to kind of fall into place for me, like Tetris blocks, that this was the W that they were looking for. And I started to get a bad feeling that they didn't have a lot of plans post-drop other than maybe buy Lambos, with our money, which I think is exactly what happened. And I was starting to get really worried. Now, what I can't explain to you guys, what I cannot explain to you guys is why I continued to hold that Oni Force for the next 4.5 months. And then at the very end of the year, probably a 2021 tax decision, I let it go for 1.69 Ethereum, $3,500.
Hey, you clipped 1+ on it. Not bad.
So
not bad in the sense
L.
that you took the L before the year end. So that's a W. You got hit by the Benihana wash job of the Aoki curse that you didn't know about. Okay, so that's provenance right there. Look, I saw Oni Force come onto the scene, and I wasn't necessarily bit by the color scheme. It wasn't really my color scheme. I think the art was cool, but I the colors weren't really my vibe so much, so I did swerve it. But I'll tell you what Oni Force did for me. That was detrimental. Oni Force set me back on the anime category. I wish I would have bit on Oni Force so that I could have been ready for Azuki. I didn't start learning the anime culture until Azuki was taken off. 3, 5, 7. I was like, I'm not going to chase this thing. I remember getting on a call with Punk9572, and he was like, Azuki's just gonna run. in it. And it was like at 3. And I was like, yeah, I think it is. Like, there was like Azuki art hit really hard for me, but I was held back by Oni. So I'm freaking stoked to talk to Henry. We met him at Snoop's party in LA, recently purchased by Binance Labs. Fascinating art blog curation beast of the 0809 internet age. Let's get into it, FaXx.
Yeah, that's right. We're going to be talking to the newer CEO. Basically, the rest of that story is that this project kind of got a lot of FUD and went all the way down to like about 0.2 ETH floor. At that point, he was acquired and there was like a takeover of some sort. And the person tasked to lead the company goes by Starlordy on Twitter. And he has staged a turnaround. And the project has come a long way since he's taken over. And we're going to talk to him today. We're going to learn more about his experience taking over this project and just like his background and kind of like what to expect. So I'm really excited because it's a really unique perspective that he has. And I think there's a lot to talk about here. So let's go ahead and bring him in.
Yo, what's up, everyone? How you doing? I'm great. How y'all doing?
We're doing great, man. We're looking forward to learning more about you, about your journey and what's going on with OniForce. So we like to find out kind of people's background a little bit in terms of how they got into crypto and Web3. So how did you find yourself in the matrix here in Web3?
Well, I found myself in the Matrix kind of like a lot of people, I think, in during Clubhouse days in 2021. So, I knew a little bit about crypto before, but I wasn't smart enough to dive into it. But when NFTs started popping off in Clubhouse, I looked into it, and that was early, like probably February or March of 2021. And then, when I looked into how smart contracts work and stuff, that's what actually got me really, really interested because I've always been interested in artist rights and things like that. So when I learned about how smart contracts could protect artists or create perpetual royalties, that sort of stuff, that's when I got really interested and realized that it was definitely the future. So that's what got me in.
Yeah, which is a fascinating place to jump off with you. Saw a tweet from you, I think it was leading into NFT NYC, that you used to run or be a part of one of the biggest art blogs.
Yeah, yeah,
Can you tell us about that?
yeah, definitely. So back when I was in college with a group of friends, we started an art blog called Empty Kingdom. This was like in 2009 before social media had really popped off. In fact, I remember Instagram was just starting to take off, and artists were like against it. They're like, "Oh, why do I get what? Why do I got to do Instagram and stuff?" Like that's how early it was, which is kind of hilarious when you think about it now. But it was just a group of friends, and we decided to start an art blog just to share our taste and interest because we felt like we had really good taste in curating, and we would always email each other like artists that we admired and spending a lot of time going through blogs and websites looking for art. We decided to start our own site, and long story short, within the first 11 months we got 1.8 million unique visitors, and that was purely organic. Like we didn't even know we just.
And that was all on Tumblr.
No, it was we had a Tumblr blog. Oh, I wonder if we still have that actually.
It's
We
still
probably.
up. I just
Oh,
pulled
it's
it up. Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
amazing. Oh, because our
It-
our main site went down, but it was we put it on WordPress, and that's where it really was built. But we did have a Tumblr just for fun, but um
and I can vouch y'all are no bullshit on curating.
yo,
Just the first scroll on that
oh
Tumblr is
yeah,
fire.
thank you. Yeah, no, we were pretty cocky, man, about that. We genuinely thought we had really good taste. And again, this is before social media, so this is literally us on the internet, like going through blogs, finding people, going through Tumblrs, going down the rabbit hole of links, and just always curating what we thought was actually the best art in that time. And like within 2 years we had over 20 volunteers around the world. Within the third year, we're up to like 5 million unique visitors a year. We were doing art shows at like Art Basel, South by Southwest. We were representing artists. Like some of the artists that we found off of like their blogs or Tumblr ended up being in like MoMAs and stuff. You know what I mean? Like we were like really, really serious about it. So that's really where I cut my teeth and learned how important it is to curate, what curation means, but more importantly, what it means to grow a community. Because, even for instance, in the time of Facebook, like we had over 60,000 unique or organic Facebook fans on our page that, we never even tried to, there were no ads at the time and stuff. It was just literally like pure organic, everything we did. Never spent money on ads. And funny enough, even though we were literally one of the top three art sites in the world, um, not even once did we run a paid ad on our website, um, which was kind of why we ended up closing it because we weren't making money. but but I think it was really about the purity. It was about the love of the art, love of artists, and so that kind of set me up in a lot of ways for NFTs. Because when I discovered smart contracts, I was like, wow, this is like the revolution we had been waiting for forever, because being involved in the art industry, you realize how it's gate kept and how certain people decide which artists end up becoming popular, and artists really didn't have a lot of protections at the time, especially digital artists. Like we would find so many sick 3D artists or digital painters and stuff like that, and they were always at the bottom of the barrel in terms of their careers and how much they could get paid for their work and stuff. So I think that's what really got me into NFTs in the beginning.
Wow. So when you take a look at your past with Empty Kingdom and where you're at now, and we'll get into where you're at now, but I'm particularly interested with like coming up from the art scene like you did, especially in the 09, 08 era. I mean, that was the time when you're just clicking, you're literally like, we didn't even have Google search to find blogs. Like you had to put a pretty crafty query together to get those blogs surfaced. So I remember going down the rabbit hole of blogs, particularly within music.
Yeah.
And it was really, going to sites that then linked out to other sites on RSS
Yeah.
feeds. And you're
Yeah.
clicking, like it would be like if you had the attention and the passion to go five clicks deep, like you're probably scoring on some underground current of taste making curation right there.
Yeah, it's true. It's kind of almost like a DJing culture a little bit too. It's because yeah, you're either in and you're truly like living that life, like, or you're not and you don't understand it. Like to find the people who had the right connections was like the way to find like the best artists. So it's like you would have to spend every day looking, and when we were running it with our volunteers, they would just literally spend all day just clicking through links and like finding artists and suggesting them, and so I think um there's something to be said about being early in an industry where you have a passion for it. It's like whether it's music or sneaker culture or whatever, it's like if you really really love it, like you got to go down these rabbit holes, and that's the only way to be like early, like.
Yeah. Yeah, and your curation kind of becomes, just a human process algo at that point, right? It gets you've amalgamated all this data to understand what you're looking at and what lens you're looking at. You send it to your buddy that you're working with to try to figure out their pulse on it. You probably got to a point where, things were coming across your desk and you were like, yeah, check mark, that's good. Send it off to your buddy and they checked it and you just knew it was a banger.
Oh yeah, like I mean, we were getting emails. I mean, it's crazy. I got an interview last year. I think the site finally went down last year, but like we're talking like 3 4 years after not even posting any new content, and I got an email from some like art degree student in Italy that wanted to interview me for her thesis because like her and her friends still used that blog to like find art. And you know what we learned is like, because our curation was so strong and we would curate across like every type of art form, um, people would use it to make their mood boards. So it's like before Pinterest, right? So like if they were like a professional photographer or like a graphic designer, they would like go through our website, and we had this functionality we built into the website where you could create filters and like search based on types of art and stuff. And so people like professionals were literally using our site to like pitch clients and like create mood boards. And so I think the curation part is actually really important, like having taste, having values that you share. It means a lot.
Yeah. Yeah. Wow. Crazy background.
Yeah, and it sounds like you saw smart contracts as a way to perpetually, drive revenue to artists. And of course, like we've seen that royalty model kind of like unfortunately take a path that I don't think at the time we saw coming. But can you speak to like a little bit about like how artists traditionally make a living and how smart contracts gave a promise to artists, and kind of like now where we're at now with the royalty situation? Can you just kind of shed some thoughts on that?
Absolutely. I mean, historically, you had basically three ways of making money. It's either A, you sell it yourself somehow, whether you go to art fairs or build a website, that sort of stuff. And you could sell your original art, you could make prints, that sort of stuff. It was a lot of work, though. You'd have to become your own entrepreneur, and it would be very, very intense. And you'd have to learn to market and sell and manage customers and stuff. Another way would be through galleries, or other tastemakers if you're a fine artist or something, especially physicals, like. But the challenge there is that the galleries really decide who gets sold and who gets popular based on, um, you know, uh, a lot of politics, to be honest, and their own personal taste.
Is that the
Um,
gatekeeping that you were
it's the
referring to?
gatekeeping. It's like a lot of galleries would be friends of friends, and there'd be a lot of great artists that they would leave out because that artist wasn't nice to them at a party, or like there'd be a lot of butt kissing back in the day. Like if you were a fine artist, you'd have to show up at gallery shows all the time, like know the right people, like build a relationship and get a shot, and you'd have to like maybe work through a group show first before you could get a solo. It's a big deal to get like a solo show, that sort of stuff. And then the third way is like the commercial route, which is like you try and get picked up as a freelancer, by like a brand and stuff. And that was rough for a lot of artists too that don't want to do commercial work, that don't want to be selling out, that don't want, Toyota to be having authorship over the type of work they create. And so back in the days, those were really like the only three ways to make money, and they were all difficult, and they all required a lot of upkeep and maintenance. And then on top of that, you had no control over like the your work in perpetuity, right? Like for instance, if you're a fine artist and you sold a painting, and then you build up your career, and that painting becomes more valuable because of your hard work. When that painting gets resold, you never see a penny of it. So let's say you sell that painting for like $5,000, and eventually it's being sold for $100,000. And even after you die, like let's say $1 million or something, like looking at like Basquiat or something, you only made that 5,000 bucks, and then somebody else is going to make like all the profit. And there was not even a question of if that profit would be sent back to the artist. It was just the way it was. And that's really what got me interested into smart contracts, is realizing that potentially, your estates could be protected, like your children could be protected, that you could do the work, grow your career, and then you could make sure that you could benefit and not just let the resellers benefit. Obviously now with the whole royalty thing, um, it's difficult. It's sad because, you know, artists, um, I think a lot of people got in the space because it's like they finally saw an opportunity to be respected, to be valued, and to be treated fairly. I think artists historically, there's something about being an artist that it's like society expects you to just be poor, like it's part of the social contract or something. Like if you're an artist, you should just accept having less than everybody else. But like we look at the society we live in right now, you know, we run on story and art. Like when the pandemic hit, like sports disappeared completely, and what was left? Like art and storytelling, you know, like we artists have actually a very important place in society. Not that sports is important, that sort of stuff. I'm just saying, like, I think our brain thrives on story and art. Because even in sports, there's always narratives, right? Like, why are you rooting for a team? Why is this one person like really important to you? Like somebody goes up, down, like comes make a comeback. Like, there's always a narrative, and so artists are the ones that help create that social narrative and just keep us entertained. But we get punished for it. So I think, you know, now when you look at these zero royalty type situations, it's very difficult because like the free market, like a general capitalist or someone that's just trying to make a buck, like they don't care about artist rights. They don't care about what happens to the artist. And it's a bit of a shame. So I think artists, as per usual in history, are going to have to keep finding ways to innovate, adapting. Even like, for instance, with all the AI music stuff, it's you know, it's like, do you need Drake to exist anymore? like, like, does he even need to be alive, or can you just have other people making his music forever now that there's models for that, right? Like, musicians I think get it the hardest. They've always been hit the hardest with technology, all the way from like Napster, and look at what Spotify has done to musicians' careers, how difficult it is for them to make money. So I think the challenge is like technology um, makes everything cheaper, and I think the nature of information is to be free. And then the nature of like capitalists or people who care more about money than art is to always want more profit. And so artists who just want to express themselves and be paid for that are the ones that get punished the most. So I think it's difficult to say where it's going to go, because you're right. Like at that time, it was such like an amazing thing, and it was such a great moment for artists to win and win big finally. None of us really predicted that it would go to zero, or like, you know, flirt with that. So I do think there'll be some sort of correction in the sense that like artists can't make zero. I mean, they're otherwise they're not going to survive, and you do need artists in the space. So I think it's going to be going back to a tiny number where it's just enough to support them existing in the space, and they're probably not. They're going to have to fight just as usual to build up a profile or a business where they could make like more profits, you know, like on par with someone who's a celebrity or something like that. Like if you look at sports again, there's a whole ecosystem and a mechanism where it's like, if you are a top athlete, it is very clear how you get to make money. Like it's very clear like what scale of money you get. Like all baseball players can understand like what the top is, what the bottom is, that sort of stuff. I think with artists, it's still not defined, um, because again, we're always being disrupted by technology itself.
There's also this inverse with artists when they get to a platform, like an inverse relationship with the platform that they achieve, which is unique. So when you compare it, when you when you take a comp of sports and you're a top 10 player, that's a platform where all commercialization plugs into you, right? You get the Nike plug, you get the Adidas plug, you get the big sponsor plug, the credit card plug. Like you get your plug from the big four that you get to, rep, whether you're a Nike Amex player or you're an Adidas MasterCard player or whatever it may be, right? You get your little, you get your extensions into the platform, and you accept that because that amplifies your reach, that amplifies your income, and, you still get to play your game. There's constraints to when you step on the court. and everything else gets to go silent. But with artists, it's different. If you get to the top and people want to plug into you, I think we're kind of seeing this with Jack Butcher right now, actually, in the space where Jack Butcher is at the top of his game in this Web3 artist world, and there's highbrow plugs that are trying to plug into that platform and get a little bit of juice of that lightning in the bottle. And it's not a conduit to his creative process. Do you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, I think that is an interesting point. There is what you're making me realize is there are actually a certain type of artist that does have comps, which is like performers, right? Like actors, specifically, I'm thinking. Like top actors have certain set royalty rates. There's a guild that helps them understand what they're going to get paid. You know, Tom Cruise, Will Smith, Tom Hanks, you know, Jim Carrey, like in the 90s, let's say, they're all getting paid 10 to 20 million bucks a pop, you know, for a movie because that's like how they compared to each other.
Right. With
Because
guaranteed money, right?
with
Before they pop on
guaranteed money
stage.
plus
Yeah.
royalties, and that's because like there's something about like, and I think this is why it ties into sports and that type of art is, if humans are entertained in real time, they are willing to pay for that. You know what I mean? If you look at like a painting, it's not real time, so it's kind of like subjective as to like when they should pay for it, what they should pay for it. Um, and then you bring up someone like Jack Butcher. It's kind of like with Web3, it is actually a real time thing because like in the moment we're watching people perform these kind of social experiments with art or like using the technology to create a moment, and then you tie in the idea of provenance, and I think in this space we care a lot about history and like when things are happening, being the first of things, like that sort of stuff is kind of creates a entertainment type feel. Also because it evolves so quickly, so it's like we all know like whatever moment we're in now, it's not going to be the same moment later. So like we're kind of capitalizing each time on that moment, you know. And so you look at like a Jack Butcher, it's like he's doing such a good job of jumping on what the zeitgeist is, making art, and also again making an interactive experience out of that art, and that's why he's creating these opportunities for people. Um, so that is something like with for instance with Oni Force that we want to kind of develop is not so much Jack Butcher, but in the sense of like how do we turn art and storytelling into monetizable events. So like kind of like the way that like Yuga has managed to turn gaming into these monetizable events, like how can we do that with story and art in Web3 as well? Um, and I think yeah, Jack Butcher is a great example of from like kind of like a higher art standpoint of like
Yeah, and another thing that Jack is working on that ties into what you said with the AI music, it's like similar concept with AI art. And when it ties back to provenance, that's where NFTs can come in and the original creator can sign that AI production, you know, with their wallet. And he's experimenting that with OPEP and AI. And, you know, we'll see how that goes. Pretty awesome. So that does bring us to this Oni conversation. You know, appreciate the background there and the art discussion. I think our listeners will appreciate that. I think we are starting to like curate this community of people who want to get deeper into the meaning behind what we're doing here and respect provenance and all of this. So I think that's great. But how did you get into Oni Force? How did your kind of background intersect with getting into this particular project?
yeah. First of all, I want to say I definitely love this conversation. I think you guys are asking great questions, and these things are important to think about because what I learned is the more that you study and focus on what are the first principles of the things that we're dealing with every day, like the better you are at just creating or managing it. So with Oniforce, it's a lot of it was luck. I guess you could rewind back to Clubhouse days. I met William Tong on there, who's one of my besties. He and I would, I mean, he was a
So he
big,
was like you met him on Clubhouse in 21 and became a best friend from there.
yeah, yeah. Well,
Nice.
through because of NFTs, we weren't best friends on Clubhouse, but we were cool. Like he was a bigger influencer on that platform. I was not really known that well, but I ran my own room and I would show up in rooms sometimes and we would, he would always be adding value and just helping and I would try as well, but um I think actually the way we got connected, we worked on an Andrew Yang thing together. I was doing work for Andrew and helping to promote him, and then um when we were all talking about NFTs at the same time. And then when I decided to go all in, he had already gone in deeper before me. And I just asked him like how to get in and he onboarded me and he introduced me. I remember the very first NFT event I went to was in LA, some party, and William introduced me to one of the founders, and at that time I had discovered Oniforce and I immediately fell in love where it was literally I thought it was the best art. Like I'd never seen, and this is actually, if you were around at that time, that was the common thing about Oniforce is like it was the best art PFP like at that.
Yo, I got to stop you for a second because Oni Force was the shit.
It
Like
was,
it,
dude. It
and,
was,
and it still holds that, and
yeah,
that's the great thing about like
yeah.
provenance. And at the time in place, like we had Pixel Vault on just a couple episodes ago,
Nice.
and at the time it was Bored Ape. I mean, obviously CryptoPunks had its provenance, so I'm not even going to put them
Sure.
in this category. But
Right.
you had Bored Ape Yacht Club. You
Hmm.
had these Punks comics that were doing a novel mint pass
Yep.
burn technology, and then
Hmm.
you had Oni Force, and Oni Force was the first of its Eastern Hemisphere influence here.
Yep.
That was a very distinct tastemaker in the space.
Yeah,
So,
you're right.
for the people that are listening, like I don't want you to downplay that. Like Oni Force was on the podium.
It was crazy. I mean, I just for fun, you're right. I was Googling Oniforce and looking at the articles about it in August 2021 was crazy. I mean, they innovated a lot of stuff. They were literally the first anime PFP project. They were the first sideways PFP. They were the first left facing, if you want to get more like specific about it. Like they created the whitelist, when it was called the whitelist because they were trying to figure out how to save on gas wars, and even little details like they were the first project to put lo-fi music into the Discord, right? Like there was all these things and then the storytelling. So it was literally,
Actually, Oni Force pushed Bake on the lo-fi radio. It was on their roadmap to put out a lo-fi radio. Oni
uh,
Force put it in the website or in the Discord, and then Bored Ape put out that lo-fi YouTube account. So there's a lo-fi battle there that no one knows about.
that's funny. Yeah, it was literally supposed to be the next bake. Like it was that big. I mean, we had Snoop Dogg bought in, Gary Vee was in the Discord all the time. Obviously Logan Paul bought a Oni for like 600K or something like that. Like it was popping off, Steve Aoki like, and um so at the time I was still more on the outside because I wasn't really like I had missed out on minting like a lot of stuff because I was like working and stuff and I wasn't checked in, and so but when I saw the art I fell in love with it, met the founder, just started partying, and then when I heard through the grapevine they were having trouble, I offered to volunteer, not knowing any of the background drama or what happened, which is probably a good thing. And then William, again, he asked me to actually manage the project. initially I thought I was just gonna like show up on the weekend or like give some marketing advice or something like that. And then he was just like, "Can you be the project manager?" And I was like, "Yeah, that sounds like a dream come true because I want to really jump into Web3 and build my own name and like you know being able to do it off the rip with like literally my favorite project, like that sounded amazing, right?"
Yeah, so take us back to that moment when they ask you to manage that project. What are like the top 3 perks that are kind of running through your mind? And perks is the wrong word.
Yeah, there's benefits, there's like the motivation behind it. I think,
Yeah, the top 3 motivation.
well, actually the first one, um, the reason why I offered to help is because so I was friends with Strawberry first, and when I met him, they were at the top. He was CEO, I think. Um, and I was only observing from the outside, right? So every event I would see him at, he would get like literally like more and more sick, like haggard. Like I literally was like watching him turned more pale, and like I would like send him text messages like, "Bro, like get some sleep. Like how's your health? Like you don't look good." That kind of stuff. And so that's why I offered to help, because I was like, "Oh, maybe these guys like are just overwhelmed. It's just too much work or something. Like you're working yourself to," because I know what burnout looks like, right? I've been burned out like before, and I've like worked myself to the bone. And so that's why I initially volunteered, because I was just like, "Oh, if you just need help, like I could take something off your hands." Like little known fact, I actually produced the video for them that when they went to Comic-Con the first time, and that was just me like volunteering. Like I would just send out one of my guys to go film and kind of like try to add some value. And like so that's why I offered to help when William asked me to be the project manager. I mean, it was a top project, so it seemed like from just a professional portfolio standpoint, that would be huge. Also, I just really wanted to get hands-on and really learn what it meant to like run an NFT project. So I was working on my own project that I was getting ready to launch. Um, but I thought, yeah, I'll take whatever. I mean, my whole life, whatever shot I could get, I'm gonna take it. So like, I was like, okay, like let me try this. Um, and you know, I didn't think much further than that, to be honest. I didn't even ask for money. Like I literally was working for free for this first 2 weeks, and then after putting in like 100-hour weeks and getting my ass kicked, I was like, I think you guys need to pay me something, because this is now like more than a full-time job, and I'm not even able to work on my own project. And the funny part is I was very naive in the beginning, and so I wasn't thinking about the benefits too much. And then when I got in, I realized like, okay, like if we can turn this around, because they had went, for perspective for anybody listening, like when I came in, which was right in the beginning of February 2022, they had gone from like 70 to point 0.2, like within a stunningly short period of time. So you could imagine how toxic, and it was the first blue chip, or not, I think Pudgy was right there too, but it was like one of the first blue chips where it was like to fall that hard and to lose people so much money. I mean, could you imagine like from a 70th floor, like how much money people were losing? Like, and and so you could imagine how toxic and crazy it was. And when I first came in, like they didn't even know me. There was actually really nice people that kind of were wanting to give me a chance, but in the beginning they were like pretty hardcore, like kind of cruel. Some people, like I came in and they were making clown face emojis about me immediately. Like they didn't even know who I was. But it's like, "Oh, new project manager, you're friends with Strawberry, you must be a piece of shit too," like that sort of stuff. And like,
And that clown, you're not the first builder to talk about the clown emoji. Like there's something about that clown emoji that hits under the skin.
oh yeah,
Yeah.
nobody wants to be perceived as a
It's like the
clown.
ultimate insult,
Yeah,
It's like
dude, it goes deep to the soul, right? Like, and like And mind you, this is literally like my first week where it's like I didn't even do anything good or bad. You know, it's just like I just showed up and it's like you walk in the door and they immediately start like beating you up and the thing is though, the reason why I didn't take it too personally, although some of it I did take personally because I was like never experienced that before. I'm like, what the fuck? I'm like, you want to fight, dude? Like, you can't talk to me like that. Like, and then like, but for the most part, I took it in stride because when I had looked in the Discord, I saw that like, despite all the anger and the hate that was happening, nobody faded the art or the value of the brand or the IP. Like even the most angry person was not saying anything bad about that. They still believed in it. And I could tell, like one person, I forgot who it was, but they said something like, you know, we'll believe it when we see it or something like that, that things could change. And I was like, oh, okay. So you're telling me you will believe it if you see it. So we have to like actually deliver something to you, you know? And also there were actually really great community members that were kind and wanted to support me from the beginning, give me a fair shot. And so very quickly within the first like 2 months, I like really fell in love with the community, and I felt like there were really so many good people that just got burned by bad ownership, and um and also just financially I felt a responsibility towards them because it's like if people spent
What does
thousands.
what does bad ownership mean to you? What does it look like?
Bad owner, that's a great question. Yeah, bad ownership, I think, is it's usually about communication in this space. I think people can come in with good intentions and screw up because they don't know what they're doing, and they're not necessarily bad, but they could do a bad job. But I think when you don't value the community, when you don't care what they say, when you don't incorporate the feedback that they're giving you into your actions, when you take people for granted, when you don't pay them for their work, you know, the list goes on and on. You know, when you are not humble, when you think that you're the shit and everybody should just give you what you want because you got rich really quick all of a sudden, and you know, like your ego is inflated, like um and then when you take most of the money and don't deliver a product, that's probably bad ownership.
There you go. Good. I don't think anybody could put it better than that. So that first couple of months when you were
That
actually like
just
in a
took me from
position,
ego to grifting right there. Just ego to grifter.
yeah, grifting 101.
Yeah.
So the first couple months when you were actually like in a position of authority, Starlordy, like what hit the top of your priority list based on what you had learned that had gone wrong?
That's a great question. Before I answer that, I do want to say one thing about the owners is that th- from my understanding, they in the beginning they thought of it as an art project, and I heard that even in their early spaces, they said publicly that they were going to split whatever money and go. Like they never in the very beginning said like, "Oh, we're going to build this big brand and this big company." It's more like they publicly stated that they were just launching it because it's something they wanted to do and they're going to go. And then once it blew up, that's when they started promising and the ego and all that stuff. And so I still don't agree with like if you're going to start a company and try to build something, like you should probably not take 90% of the money. But I just want to say like I don't want anybody to think that from the beginning that they had an intention of like rugging the project or something like that. And also they suffered for a whole year with me as well. Like they were working, they were putting in the time while they were also being hated, and you know, so I think it's a little different than a hard rug or something where it's like somebody goes into it knowing what they're, you know, what they're doing off the bat. So I think a lot of it was like they didn't intend on it, on starting a big brand. They got an opportunity to. They thought they could do it, and then they found out that they really couldn't. Plus, like to be real, like if five strangers meet on Clubhouse and they agree to split the money 5 ways, once that money comes in, if it changes your life, right? Like if you're like poor and then all of a sudden you have money, like to convince the only way for that money to come back is if all five people agree to like give up that money. And I'm sorry,
Yeah,
but
they
you're
like
not
all five people are coming back to triple down because they all collectively see a broader vision.
right, but you're not going to get five people who were poor before or not, as wealthy. Not everybody was poor, but I'm saying, as an example, like most of them were not rich. And it's like, you're not going to get that and give people life-changing money and then ask them to give life-changing money back when that wasn't part of the deal initially. Like that just doesn't have, that's human psychology, you know what I mean? So I don't want to, again, I don't think that was great from a business standpoint. It still doesn't make them great founders. I just want to say that on the record so that I don't want people to think that these are like bad people that like went in there with bad intentions. You know what I mean? It was just more like they just were the wrong people to run it after they launched it. And so, but anyways, to answer your question, I think, I learned this all ties back to Empty Kingdom, which is like I learned a lot. Like everything I learned was through Empty Kingdom, which was that you want to have clear values, you want to communicate those values consistently, and you want to make sure that your actions actually support those values, right? So like for me, when I first came into the project, I realized that the lack of transparency, the lack of communication, the lack of trust, was the main reason why it was so toxic, right? It's like if somebody who's responsible for your bags doesn't communicate with you, it just creates a lot of anxiety and fear and doubt. Like, like it's rough. And so right when I came in, I was like, okay, what we're going to do is we're going to establish our values, which is to be honest, to be transparent, and to work really hard, right? And to value the community. Those are the values, like from the get-go, my first town hall, that's what I said to everyone. And then I looked at the roadmap and I said, okay, you guys promised all the way up to a metaverse. Like literally everything the community told you they wanted, you just put it on the roadmap. I was like, we're not building a metaverse. Like we don't have the money or the time or the resources. So let's look at like, what are the core things that were promised early on that we actually can deliver, which were the frames, the second collection, and then the comic book, right? And so when I came in, I just ripped off the band-aid and was very honest and said to everyone, look, like we can't do all this stuff. It's not going to happen. But what we can do is we're going to do the frames and the comic, and we're going to get it done by end of Q1. So I had literally 2 months to deliver these projects, which thankfully we actually did on time, which was crazy. I mean, it was like 2 months of 100 hours a week of working and like very, very stressful time. Because imagine like I'm trying to manage this project, deliver a product. I'm learning on the job about smart contracts, how they work. So it's like having to like make these decisions that could affect the project forever, for the whole future of the project while you're learning it is very stressful. You know what I mean?
Yeah, let me just stop you for a sec to say that like honesty and transparency, it really goes a long way, and just hearing you transparently explain something, it resonates, like I was a early purchaser of OniForce, and like I'd kind of come to this conclusion that, okay, the people that started this project, they were well networked, they were able to build hype, and they leveraged a really amazing artist. But beyond that, like they didn't really have a clear plan of execution, and you've kind of like pretty much validated that, and just understanding that yes, that's what happened. I think it goes a long way, and in this space, like one example, one anecdote I'll give you in terms of like addressing FUD with transparency and honesty is Frank DeGods, right? Like DeGods have been FUDded more than any other project, period, but they're still out there and they're still succeeding. And why is because Frank learned over time to not run from the FUD, but rather to embrace the FUD and address it. So people have a lot of negative sentiment. They have criticism. He'll pop up a space. He'll be like, okay, let's talk about this. He'll talk through it. He'll give some rational explanation. And then by the end of the space, everyone's like, ho-hum, like, there's not really that much to FUD anymore. We understand now the communication solves some of the angst and some of the criticism. So yeah, I think coming out the gate with that game plan was definitely excellent.
It's a combination also of like transparently regurgitating and articulating the L's, taking the L's on the jaw, and that takes, that's wear and tear on a leader, taking L's on the jaw in public all the time. But the reality is that if you're invested in a brand, if you're invested in a builder in this space, that you want them taking L's. Like, you want them stretching themselves and taking little L's to build up to big W's. And I just am like, I'm always going to put my stake in the ground behind builders who can, show up and deposit those small L's for the greater good. And I think we're out of space, honestly, post bear market, or post, let's call them doldrums of bear market, where the people who are around right now, they want to be around. And one of the things you tweeted, Starlordy, I think at the end of last week, that just hit really hard for me, and it hit really differently, was that you're out at NFT NYC meeting with, you're out at NFT NYC prioritizing builders in your community. Like, that tweet to me hit really hard as a builder, because it told me that, like, this guy's metrics are dialed. Like, his meeting ratio and impact out there is really dialed in. It made me really bullish. Can you kind of talk to me about that?
Thank you. Yeah, no, I agree with all of that. I mean, by the way, I got to meet Frank finally in person, and he's a fucking great dude, man. He's a genuinely nice guy. Like, I go by values, because values mean intention, and he's somebody I've been watching, observing. You know, it's tough in this space because, like, being a builder, um, it kind of creates a tension amongst people that don't care about what you're building, that only care about their bags. Right? So, like, you take these L's in public, which every builder has to. I mean, you can't build without taking that's like saying an athlete, like, you're not allowed to lose one single game, right? Or you're not allowed to miss, like, one, like, game-winning shot. You know what I mean? Like, that's ridiculous. That's not even realistic. But I think in a bear market, especially because people's bags are so delicately tied to projects, they kind of overreact to any little mistake or little bad thing, and they kind of exacerbate that situation. And so, like, being a builder, in my mind, means, like, actually caring about the future of the space, caring about your communities, caring about your project in a long-term way. So yeah, being a builder means you actually care about your community and the space itself, the technology, um, and so it's like you have to really invest in the right future, if that makes sense, right? Like, if you're only care about pumping people's bags, yeah, like, start Nakamigos. Like, feel free. Like, that's great. But, like, if you actually want to build something that's going to have long lasting returns on people's, you know, uh, quote, investments. I have to be careful calling them investments, right? Because they're not securities. But if you're like, if you care about what people do with their ETH, let's just say that, then you have to build for the long term. So that's why, like, I focus again on people who also care about those things, that, like, actually ask themselves, how are they going to return value now and in the future for people? So I think that's what a builder is someone that's actually building.
I was just gonna ask if I can, like, the word investment was thrown out there. We're not going to take it out of context, but where does that put Binance in this equation
As a platform? Oh, with
so
the ownership group?
yeah
I see. Yeah. So for anybody that's listening, our new ownership group consists of the ex-CFO of Binance plus the Binance Labs team. They broke off and created their own $100 million fund. We are the first NFT project they purchased. We are their flagship company in Web3. they took a look at the landscape and saw that, you know, when it comes to projects that they could acquire, um, and that were available to acquire, we had hands down the best opportunity in terms of the art and storytelling and community. I think the community actually created a lot of value for that acquisition, because for the community to stick around and be so loyal and like care so much about this brand and IP, um, they also referred to it as a community buyout, where like them calculating the potential long-term value of this brand also was informed by the community itself. Because if the community didn't show up, there would be no value, right? Because they'd be like, oh, like nobody actually cares. But so they are making considerable investments in the sense of their time and resources and network. And financially, we're still being treated a little bit like a startup for this year, in the sense that we need to still perform. We need to take the resources we have and show that what we could do with it. But as more and more success comes, like more investment comes, and from them. And so the main thing is that we, who is the head of OFR, and was the ex CFO of Binance, he's putting at least half of his time into this project, which is a lot. I mean, that's a lot. I mean, you're talking about somebody running $100 million fund that has been CFO of two publicly traded companies, like that has literally made CZ like billions of dollars, putting in half of his time into this project. That means a lot. I mean, it also,
What is it?
yeah.
What are his core functions? I get what a CFO, is typically tasked with, but I don't think any NFT project has that dialed of. I'm confident to say no NFT project has that dialed of a CFO
No.
involved. I mean,
And he
even
was
Yuga
also,
doesn't have a CFO to that level involved. So if you can give us
yeah.
insight into the very first NFT project with that level of a CFO over the top of it, that would be
Yeah,
appreciated.
that's a great question. First of all, he's more of a business and a builder CFO, if that makes sense. Like, he builds businesses. It's not just some guy that like counts numbers or does accounting or that sort of stuff. Like, every company he's been at, he was integral to building the brand and the business itself. Like, he's more of a actually a business developer, a brand developer than anything.
Yeah, slash probably one of the best vendor negotiators you've been in a room with, too, huh?
Oh yeah, that guy is a beast. I mean, dude, like Wizard of Soho, shout out to him. When the acquisition happened, he referred to the Binance Labs team as the greatest M&A acquisition team in the history of crypto, because they've like acquired hundreds of companies, and so the man is like a master, like when he speaks, it's like asking, Kobe Bryant for basketball advice, right? Like he can cut to the deepest, like most meaningful point. He can see through any situation and know exactly how it's going to play out. Like, it's incredible. Like, I agree. Like, there's literally no NFT project right now that has that level of leadership. So his role is really, like, as a high level owner, is really like, um he is a master advisor, and he's also, I run everything by him. So I am the CEO, but he could easily be the CEO. You know what I mean? It'd be like, um almost if there was like another CEO on top of the CEO or something. Like he's like the man, like. And so that was another reason why I decided to stay, because at the time when we were getting through the acquisition, I wasn't sure, depending on who bought it, if I would stick around. And mostly I was leaning towards not sticking around, like just get through the transition and then go, because I feel like I always have other things that I could do myself. But as soon as I met him, I was like, man, that would be stupid if I left, because I'm gonna, like, when would I get a chance to learn from someone like that and to have direct access, like, 24/7, to be able to ask any question I want and just level up myself. And so the benefit that he offers isn't just resources and stuff, but it's like anything, any problem or a like situation you present to him, he will give you the best approach, the best advice, be able to like see around the corner and just cut through the noise and keep you focused on what's important. You know what I mean? Um, so I think we have a killer team. I mean, we're kind of ready to destroy, to be honest. Like it's kind of scary actually how powerful this team is, and I think in the next couple months we're going to start seeing that play out in the space.
I love to hear it, and and kudos on seeing that opportunity to level up. Yeah, I've exited companies before, and going through that M&A process and integrating that company into a broader brand. I mean, it's usually the definition of hell from my personal perspective. So you do like, I mean, I kind of want to shape what you said a little bit, because I think people listening might be like, dude, he was going to bounce, but if it wasn't for this guy, he wouldn't have stayed on it. I don't think it's like that. I think it's that when you go through that M&A decision and you go with a company to be a part of a bigger company, that's a lot of bureaucracy that you have to go through, and sometimes you don't get to keep the good parts of what you were a part of through that bureaucracy. Is that fair to say?
Absolutely. I mean, with OFR, the transition has been the easiest thing. Once we actually exited the founders, the hard part was getting through the acquisition itself. But also, like for perspective, it's like, you know, I'm pretty ambitious, and I had already put in like $150,000 of my own money into my own NFT project that I never launched for over a year because of OniForce, that I felt like this responsibility to the community. I have other business ideas and things that I want to develop. So it's not like I was just trying to bounce. It was just like I would stay through whatever time period needed to make sure that it was a clear transition, you know? Um, and uh, Depending on if it wasn't OFR, you know, that's where you're right. It was a question mark. Like depending on who it was, like I already went through a year of suffering. Like I got other ambitions. Like I'm not trying to like just go through another period with somebody, some ambiguous new team where I'm gonna have to like deal with them and not know if it's gonna be a good experience or not. But I knew right off the bat that this was like the perfect place for me to stay and to grow. So um,
Yo, what it sounds like you got bullish on what was happening and the opportunity that was in front of you. I mean, you came
yeah,
in during the worst time when the people were calling for this project to go to zero. You know,
yeah,
you dealt with the toxicity, you turned around the communications, you went through the mud, and then look where we're at now. You've more than 3x'd the almost 4x the floor price. Things are turning around. The art still slaps. And what we're hearing here about the team behind this, look, this is Alpha, the ex CFO of Binance that is part of this $100 million fund, has gotten behind this particular project because they're bullish on this project, and you're working closely with him on the next phases of this. So maybe we can get into like where OniForce is going from here. You know, how
mhm.
is this? I know you're delivering the comic book. You know, how else is the art being leveraged? What can people expect from OniForce, for the rest of 2023?
Mm-hmm. That's a great question. I think, you know, there's been some pressure amongst people we've met for us to define ourselves immediately, um, which is a fair question, right? Because people want to know if we're worth putting eggs into our basket, especially considering the past history. Um, but again, going back to the wisdom of Wei, he told me in the beginning, it's like we know what our value is, which is the art and the storytelling. When it comes to like what space we're going to occupy, we should be careful not to pigeonhole ourselves too early, to allow us a little bit of time to develop it and organically see like where our true value is for the long term. And I think it took us a couple months, but we definitely know now, um, which, this is alpha in the sense that we haven't, we're getting ready to relaunch in a big way. We're going to be making some really big announcements to who we're adding to the team, to the advisory board, um, and and that's where like probably a lot of the official like vision and roadmap, blah blah blah, is going to come out. But I could say that when I asked, we like I asked them when we first started working together. I'm like, okay, 2 3 years from now, where do you see us? Like, what's ideal scenario for you? Because I want to know, like, for me as CEO, is like I have my ideas, right? But it's like, where do you think that like an optimal situation we're going to be? And he said, you know, multi-billion-dollar brand, you know, um, but also we have a potential to be an apex predator, to be like a Yuga, where we can actually acquire other brands and companies, and I think the way that we would get to that level is through creating an ultimate like um, fan experience like platform, like through art and storytelling. So if you think about what Yuga's done, like going all in on gaming and how they've really learned how to monetize it, through NFTs and community, like we would basically be doing the same with art and storytelling. So turning art and storytelling into monetizable events and follow up with products and stuff. So it's really like, if you're going to say in one sentence, it is actually like a Disney 3.0,
You know
right?
what? I think the Disney line is so underrated. Like I know a lot of people throw that out there, but the
Yeah.
Disney line is so underrated because in the physical world, Disney can't scale like it
Yes.
wants to scale. Like
Correct.
it started with Disneyland and that was a phenomenon. And then you do Disney World and then you have Shanghai and then you have all these resorts, Tokyo, all around the world. When you walk through Disneyland and you look at Disneyland as an IP curator, it's phenomenal. It's
Crazy.
really, it's phenomenal that they have, rides. I mean, I do. The Disneyland thing was kind of corny when it was first thrown out, but when you inspect it and you realize that like attributing two rides to a group of content and having merch come out of that content library and watching people walk around Disneyland with Minnie Mouse ears, it's like that's the metric of
Yeah.
Disneyland. How many Minnie Mouse ears are getting put on people? That's the if I ran the park every day, I'd be having the Minnie Mouse ears metric in my face.
It's funny you say that because that's literally like how I started off pitching Uniforce a year ago. And it became corny very quickly because I think Disney is so huge, it's like you can't even conceptualize like how to get there, and it's just like a buzzword or something like that. But
Yeah.
I think, for me, what I realize is like, I think very deeply about these things actually. Like, what is story? I realized like a long time ago, story is code for our brain. Like our brains like literally run on story. Like that is the code. And so like, our personalities are just collections of the stories we've consumed, the environment, our family, like the stories we tell ourselves, who we are, like where we're at in life, what our purpose is. It's all a fucking story, man. And so like, um, and then I think about like Disney, Marvel, that sort of stuff, and anime. It's like, do they have any problem taking people's money? Like, no. Like, they just create the product, people fall in love with it, and they throw their money at them, right? And so I thought about, like, okay, like, now, where's the opportunity here with the Web3 company? It's like, I realized the thing I don't like about Web 2 brands like Disney or Marvel is that they don't actually care about their community in terms of like, they don't really love you, right? Like they say,
Zero. It's consumer. Their
yes,
community is consumerism. Like
exactly.
it's actually more of a rug than if you could sell an NFT and then never come into the community, but people are there talking in a Discord together. There's actually more community in a Web3
Right.
rug Discord than there is in Disneyland.
You heard it here
No,
first.
yeah.
Disney is a rug per Goodmonth ETH on the Never Fade NFT podcast.
I mean, look, it's true because what hit me really hard is I realized is like they only care about you while you're paying them money. Like that's it. If you're not paying them money, you're not a customer. Therefore, they don't care about you. And then when they use community or they do like fan engagement stuff, it's just like servicing for them to make more money. And so I thought, okay, Web3 is different though. Community matters, right? And I thought, what is the next level of a Disney or a Marvel? You know what it is? It's when you pay the fans. It's like what would make somebody even more loyal is if you created a Star Wars universe and you paid people to consume that shit, right? Like
Right.
that's next level.
And you
Like,
pay people to be engaged. You pay people to
yeah,
share. You pay people to be an
right.
ambassador. You know how many
Correct.
people? You know how many people like love to talk in Star Wars, like
Chats.
analogies. It just
Yes.
like people coming over to the house and you have a drink and you're talking about the new Star Wars. And if you go into a character with them, they want to go into that. That
Right.
motherfucker needs to be paid.
Dude, that's what I'm saying. Is so I think the next level is when the fans get paid, and not only for consuming, but for to help build it, right? So it's like imagine if Star Wars actually supported the fanfics that were made, right? Or if Harry Potter like paid people to do fan like that's next level. So when we talk about consumer loyalty, it's like who is going to be more loyal? A Disney that just takes your money or a Disney that pays you, right?
Yeah.
Like which company are you going to live and die for, right? And so that's when I realized it's like it's really important to use Web3 values to destroy the Web2 model, right? Like to disrupt like the way that Netflix took down Blockbuster. We have to do the same thing. And so when we say something like, "Oh, we want to be the next Disney," people might say it's corny, but I'm going to push back moving forward and say like, "No, like that why shouldn't we aspire to that? Like why shouldn't we go
Yeah.
for that as a goal?"
I
You know what I mean?
100%. Yeah, I 100% agree.
Yeah, so with that in mind, Starlordy, like what kind of advice would you give to other builders in Web3 about kind of like managing community and fostering brand loyalty?
I mean, first of all, if you're a builder and you're not trying to build something like if you're going to call yourself a builder and you're not actually trying to build something for at least try for the long haul, like just fuck off. That's the first thing I would say. You know,
Yeah.
like somebody had asked me what's my favorite part of the bull market. I said immediately without hesitation is like all the shitty projects dying, you know, like seriously, like fuck off. Like all the people that sucked up liquidity with no intention of actually building something, like if you don't come with that intention, like just seriously, like fuck off. I don't give a fuck about you. Pardon my foul language. And then, but for everybody else, that's actually serious, which actually I think is most of the people that are left that I met in NFT NYC and LA and all that stuff. The people who have the real dreams and aspirations. I would say, number one advice is don't think of your community as a separate entity from yourself. Like that's one little mistake I'm seeing like with projects is like um they understand the value of community, but they think of a community as something to manage, right? Like as if it's like a separate entity. But if you think about your community as like a vital organ, right? Like it's your heart, right? Or like your liver or something. It's like you would think about it differently, right? Like the value of taking care of it becomes more intrinsic to your survival, right? And then like listening to it becomes more important because if you don't listen to it, then you actually could die. You know what I mean? So it's like making your community like more family or more like I think of community as DNA for the project, right? Like if you can make it that core level, it actually will change the way that you think, that the way that you communicate to them, and then it will also give you more insights on how to grow with them and to take them as a value add. And so I would start there, and then again, it comes down to a couple key things, which I said before is like, um, again, you have to know what your values are, which means, so I would say start with your why. Like, why are you here? Like, what is the vision you want? Like, with my presentation to the new ownership group, um, I told them, I said, I don't just want to make IP and story. I want to change people's lives. Like, I only want to work on businesses that are net positives on this humanity, in this society. Like, I think, when you look at um like Star Wars, Spider-Man, it's like these values get given to people passively, right? Like, you watch this character, you like their values, you take it in and it becomes part of your identity. But as the world is becoming more complex and there's more misinformation and there's more toxicity and stuff, it's like, as a company, we should have more intention of actually trying to make the world a better place, trying to improve people's lives so for instance, if you're playing a video game, maybe the villain represents anxiety, and then as you defeat that villain, you subtly get these skills that help you deal with anxiety in your own life, right? Like, we can actually code that into the actual IP, right? Like, especially if you start combining AI technology, it's like, in the future, it's like your story will know if you're depressed or if you're anxious or if you're acting erratically, and it could actually adjust the storyline to help you deal with that thing, or maybe be more sensitive to your situation, and help you. So it's like having actual intentions to change people's lives um, is a why for us, right? Like, why are we here? It's not to tell stories, it's to change people's lives through stories, right? So having a clear why is very important. And for, anybody who's a founder trying to figure out how to formulate a why, is like, just picture like 5, 10 years in the future, if you were to impact society, right? Like, how would your project impact the people that you serve, right? That's your why. Then once you have your why, then you have to have your values, which is like, how do you get there, right? Like, every company has a set of values that's intrinsic to them. Those values actually end up determining your fate. For instance, I'll give you an example. Facebook, their first value was move fast and break things, right? Which was a value of like, okay, we got to innovate, we got to rapidly change things, it's okay to make mistakes and break things. However, I think they ended up breaking things. Like, you look at the impact of politics because of Facebook, the mental health because of Instagram. They fucking broke things because that was their value. Like, they didn't like, their motto wasn't make the world a better place. Their motto wasn't like, let's help people have a better mental health or whatever it is. Like, Google's first value was don't be evil, right? Which helped them create the greatest, like, kind of free information search engine in history, right? Like, they got rid of the motto, so you could start debating like, what is evil anyways. But the point is, like, your values literally determine the outcome of what you do. So if you can't articulate those values, you might end up going in directions that you're pulled that aren't where you want to go. So it's important to know your values clearly, which brings me to the next point, is that you want to communicate them clearly. It's like, your community needs to know what your values are. They need to know what you stand for. When I first came into the project, again, it was about being honest, transparent, and working hard. Like, it was very simple. And that's what we did. Like, the community saw us, our actions, living out, like, proving those values like every day. And that's the fourth thing, is you want to make sure you deliver on what you say your values are, that your actions match your words. If you do that, your community will love you. They will run through brick walls for you. They will protect you from FUD. I'm very blessed with the community that I'm part of. I consider myself a servant to the community. You know what I mean? Like, and I'm lucky because my community has my back. Like, I've made mistakes, but even if some of them have called me out, they've never done it in a way that wasn't from the best intentions of the project, of wanting to make me better as well. They've taught me so much. If I was just talking at them or just treating them as like something that I don't want to deal with, then when I do make a mistake, then they're going to treat me differently. You know what I mean? So, and I think honestly, that is a reflection of the success of this project, is that focusing on the core community and respecting them and making them happy first. It's like anybody that showed up to check on Oniforest, they would only hear good things, right? Like they would hear like that we were authentic. So I think that's my advice for any founder of any project, of any company. Like if you could get that right, it gives you the runway to figure out the business stuff, figure out the product stuff, and all the other things that are difficult, you know?
Yeah, I mean, I think what you articulated here is what people in this space really are looking for as like a North Star. And it is like the opposite of what's happened on the projects that have rugged. And you know what I'm saying? So it's like, it's really bullish to hear that. I mean, just to understand better how you think as a builder, how you're looking at this project, the IP, and also the community, which you described as like essentially like a vital organ of the project, which is beautiful to hear, man. So with that, like I have to absolutely put you, Starlordy, in the no fade zone.
Hey,
Hey, let's go.
let's
No, this is,
go.
dude, there, you know, I truly hope a lot of people have the opportunity to listen to this episode because it's really eye-opening, especially considering like the failures that this project originally went through, the turnaround story, where you stand now from a leadership's perspective and also from like a value perspective. So absolutely great content, man, to be frank. With that, any kind of like departing words here for us today, bud?
Man, this is a great conversation, dude. I really genuinely really appreciate it. I think you guys asked really great questions. You have a really authentic like perspective on like this space that I definitely vibe with. I think you guys are good people, so I'm glad that we got a chance to hook up. Um and yeah, I don't know, like I guess last thing I would say is like right now we're going through hard times. Um you look at the macroeconomic situation, everybody's suffering more. Everybody in the space is going through something in their own personal life. You know, I think the saying before was like be kind because you don't know what people are going through. Now I think it's like be kind because everybody's going through some shit, right? Like just assume everybody's going has something difficult in their life. Um and you're seeing that with projects that are fumbling a little bit, that because people are suffering more, they're less forgiving. And also, I see some communities are easier to attack each other, like they're kind of enjoying seeing other people fail a little bit. And so I just want to remind people that it's like it's all one community still. You know, like we're like really small. Like this is a baby, like that we're trying to grow, and we have to think of it as one community. Um, that's why I'm investing more time into joining other people's communities, to learning how they move, supporting them, like reaching out to founders that are getting fudded. Maybe if I think it's not fair, like I want to reach out to them and just let them know that I'm like there to back them up if they need something. And I think we'll get through this together. But we'll appreciate the journey more when the bull market comes back if we know that we supported each other through those down times. I think that's like my key message, you know?
Yeah, absolutely, man. It's like Lord of the Flies out here sometimes,
Yo,
you
it's
know,
wild, dude.
people like
Wild.
attacking each other. But
Oh
hey,
yeah.
man, with that, really appreciate your time and input and allowing us to understand better how you think and how you're approaching Oni Force. Absolutely a pleasure. We'll definitely kind of like later in the year try to link up
Yes.
and revisit kind of where you've come, what
Yes.
other experiences you've come across, and share that with our listeners. So thank you so much again for joining us.
Thank you. Thanks everyone. Cheers.
Yo, that was ridiculous, FaXx. Thoughts? 1 minute rundown.
I just really like the way that Starlordy is approaching Web3. I think his values are in the right place. I think his head is in the right place. And yo, this alpha about the ex-CFO of Binance and this $100 million Binance fund and the weight of these figures who are behind the scene, like, man, I don't know. That has a major impact. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I mean, honestly, the history that they had versus where they're at today, their collection is underneath. They are Binance's pet project right now. That's the takeaway. Like, Binance has an NFT project that they are investing in from a venture capital state, and they're going to fuck around and find out. Specifically in the regulatory landscape, Binance is the only crypto exchange out there that has the appetite to take on this NFT space. Coinbase, they're more focused on adoption, L2, KYC and crypto, but Binance taking an interest in an NFT project is bullish. I'm going to buy for the history. I'm going to buy for the provenance. I'm not going to buy because I expect a return. I'm not going to buy to try to flip. I'm here for the story. I think Henry's background in art curation is bullish. I think his awareness of selling or exiting the company and bouncing, but staying on because he has growth, that's that type of pressure cooker that you want a founder to go in to experience something that could give you life-changing opportunity as a holder. I'm in.
Yo, good is back. Good is in. Look, I love what we heard today. Honestly, I really am happy that we had that conversation. Hopefully you guys enjoyed listening. Thank you so much. Follow us on Twitter at NeverFadeNFT. Subscribe to our YouTube. Comment. And if we see you in the comments, drop your Twitter handle. We're going to be looking for people that we could add to some special feedback groups that we're evaluating here for the community. So appreciate that. With that, that's another episode of Never Fade, the NFT podcast. To our producer at Hazel B. Jordan, take us away.
Verifying everything.
That's a bad bet if the bags check less. About to burn back to back, flipping not cheap when that Jenny duh hits. That's the race to 250 in the world and you chose to sleep. That's a bad bet if you wake up checkless. No more people without bags, yet they need status. Running head first with the VV check thirst. Never heard of a hearse, but they connecting the dots.